Okay, so welcome to the virtual home buyer class. Our team, Midwest Invest Realty Group, is super excited to present this. We have the wrong date on there because we did one in February, but it is now May. Thankfully, it's not February. But this is something we are passionate about doing. We love to educate. This is the best part of our job is to show the next steps for people. The biggest question we get is, hey, I really want to get into home ownership. I want to get into investment real estate. I'm curious about new construction. What are the next steps? And I'm hoping that this presentation provides some of those. Gives an overview, but then also brings it back down to like, where's your place in it? So today's topic, how in the heck do I buy a house? If you guys could see my camera, you can see all my crazy hand gestures. How in the heck do you buy a house? Okay, like I said, the question we get all the time. And there's a lot of steps, and a lot of people have seen other people do it, or they've heard other people tell them about it. But I really want you to get a map of the process tonight. That's the goal. And here it is. Here's the map. And that's it. We're done. No, I'm kidding. This is just a preview. I'm going to go through every step, but this is kind of our visual, you guys. This is our little path through the home buying process. And this is something that, you can take pictures of. Kind of got overviews. You'll see this a lot, but this is going to be kind of our guide through the process. But first, I want to introduce you to who the heck is yapping at you tonight. And that is me, Kyle Reedstrom. I'm the team lead at Midwest Invest Realty Group. And I'll get into the history a little bit. So this is my beautiful engineering photo from my past. So I got my education at NDSU. I got my civil engineering degree, worked as a civil engineer for 2 years. I said, this wasn't my favorite thing in the world. So I started exploring, started reading books, and I got into real estate, met some people, and they said, jump in, it's fun, sounds like you. And so I did in 2015. Started my real estate career with Hatch Realty. This is my first ever business card and my beautiful picture against the brick in April with my white skin. And a lot of people said I should be in the Twilight series because I look like Edward from Team Edward, or Rudy. I get that a lot too, like the Rudy. I don't know. I didn't make those nicknames up for myself, but we'll get better over time. Hopefully you can see I've aged well. So 2015 started with Hatch at the bottom, starting at the bottom. Now we're here. There's my rapping career. And this was the beginning of a big passion of mine, which is working with first-time home buyers, working with home buyers, sellers, new construction. And so I worked at Hatch for several years, kind of ended up getting into be their top salesperson there. I got my broker's license there. I ran a small team there. And as you can see, I improved my picture there. And so that was in 2018. My career at Hatch, I ended up selling over 600 homes in 7 years from when I started to now, and over $100 million in transaction volume. All that is not to brag. It is to tell you I've done this a lot, and I still learn things, but I've seen almost everything there is to see in a real estate transaction. If it hasn't been me, it's been my team members or other people. So this is where I get really excited to share my experience and hopefully guide you correctly and from a place of experience, not just something I do as a hobby. So today, our good looking crew is Midwest Invest Realty Group, brokered by Real. This is me. Obviously, my beautiful wife is on our team next to me. And then we have Austin on the left there and Jory White, who are both on the call here on the right there. And so this is our real estate team. And we're working here in Fargo. We're branded Midwest Invest Realty Group because we have a lot of investors we work with, but we also do normal purchases, sales, new construction, all of the above in our Fargo-Moorhead market. Why do we do it all? Because of these wonderful people in my life. My two pups there in the bottom left. I have a little daughter named Rosie. We spent some time in Florida. There's my wife. And we actually just had a little baby. Wesley Robert Reedstrom joined our world in April. And so family of four. And again, anybody asks us what we're up to, we're creating a healthy business serving people in order to create our lifestyle that we have envisioned for our family. So we're super passionate and stay hungry that way. And a side note before I get started in this process, you guys, is we love real estate investing. We branded around real estate investing. Paul, you even mentioned you're doing some real estate investing. I'm excited to hear that. We love the conversation of purchasing property or assets to create capital or hold as long-term rentals to create cash flow and passive income. So that's a whole nother side conversation. But just know we work with a lot of investors. We have a lot of off-market deals that we're coming across, and we can be an awesome resource for people that are curious about that as well, because we don't always have capital deployed to do that ourselves. So we work with a lot of people and hand deals off and find them. We look through real estate with that lens. So just wanted to note that as well, because we're passionate there. So let's get into this wonderful process, gang. Start from the beginning. But first, and if there's one thing you take away from this presentation, this is it. The two most important things that will make this everything I'm saying, all these details, all this information simple, if you just learn one thing, it's if you have an awesome realtor, and yes, I made these funny faces because you see Austin and Gabe here. If you have an awesome realtor and an awesome lender as part of this process, everything will go smooth. Everything will go smooth. There is a team involved in buying a house. Sometimes people just think, hey, I just need a real estate agent. You need a real estate agent. You need a lender. When you have these two pieces in place, they talk to each other. They solve problems. They make sure everything goes very smoothly for you. And a lot of times, Gabe, you can nod your head at this. We get people to the finish line and they're like, wow, that was easier than I thought it would be, or that was really smooth. And that was peaceful. And we go, there's a lot of back end stuff that it takes to make it there, but really great people will make that a great result for you. And you've probably heard some of the horror stories of people that home buying gone wrong. And that's usually because one of these two pieces wasn't there. So I'll turn away from Austin's fake six-pack here and we will keep moving. So starting the process, pre-approval. Gabe, I'm going to give you a little screen time here if you want to just walk us through. Okay, this is the beginning. This is where you meet that rockstar lender. Gabe, what's pre-approval look like for people?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Just a little background on me. I've been in the mortgage industry for almost 6 years now, and much like Kyle, I've seen just about everything. I have done just about every program, from down payment assistance programs, primary residence, to second homes, to investment properties with 15 to 25% down. So I've seen pretty much the whole spectrum of mortgage that you can get, from single family homes to 4-unit quadplexes. So it's been a wild ride, and it's an industry that has ever changing regulations, and it's our job to keep on top of those regulations and make sure we are guiding you correctly to purchase that home, whatever house it is, whether it's primary residence or second home or investment property. So to pre-approve you, we look at three major things. We look at your credit, your income, and your assets. And by assets, I really mean money in the bank or money saved somewhere. By assets, I don't mean like a car that you have, even if it's paid off. I don't really mean your car, because you're not going to sell your car to buy a house. Unless you have multiple cars and you want to do that, that's okay. But we don't usually advise people to sell their car to buy a house. So, because most people need a car. So now on those three things, income, assets, and credit, we take a very deep dive into income. So that's why we need verifying documents like pay stubs and tax returns and W-2s. That's something that we get further down the road after we get that mortgage application in and credit pulled. So that's something where a lot of times people get pushed to apply too soon for their mortgage. And what I like to do is just have a conversation, just have a phone call saying, hey, this is where we're at. This is what Credit Karma shows for my credit. This is how much I have saved up to buy a house. And what should I do from here? Right? That way I have the numbers to help give the proper guidance to tell you what your next steps are. I often tell people, if I can't pre-approve you now, we'll get you on a 6 month or a 1 year or a 2 year plan to pre-approve you for that first home or for that next home. And then we just make a solid plan to get you ready to buy.
Awesome, Gabe. And that's, you guys, this all leads up to the one thing that I call going from yellow light to green light in this process, which is getting your pre-approval letter. I always think of that as the tangible ticket to buy, because whenever we are going to offer on a property, we're going to put that pre-approval letter first before the offer. And then the rest of the offer comes to show, hey, we're a qualified buyer working with a local lender. Here we are. We're ready to go. Now take our offer seriously. And as on the other side, when I'm representing sellers and they don't have a pre-approval letter, or let's say they even have like a national lender that's like a Rocket Mortgage or a Quicken, that we don't have somebody local that's looked into the depth that Gabe's talking about, that pre-approval letter dilutes that offer. Whereas if you get a strong lender that people knows in town, it's going to help your offer. So that pre-approval letter is the goal on this first step. And that's a huge piece of homework.
One more thing to add to that, Kyle, is when we pre-approve you, we send a TBD pre-approval letter where for the subject property address, it's just TBD, like to be determined. That's to use in a pinch, right? If you don't get a hold of me and you got an offer on a Friday night and I'm dealing with a sick kiddo or something like that, the realtor will have that. But most often I'm able to get address specific pre-approval letters to people as soon as they set up the showing for that home, or as soon as they know they want to offer. Then you can have that pre-approval right on the top. And we even take it a step further and we call the listing agent to make sure they know that we have your file all set up. We have the documents in, we have everything ready to go and to move quickly if we need to. That has actually made us win out on 3 offers that I know of this year, because I called the listing agent on a Sunday afternoon when the offer was submitted, saying our file was all set up, we're ready to go, and we were neck and neck with other offers. The other lenders didn't call, and it put ours on the top. So it's a big deal to get pre-approved, but to have a lender who's going to do the extra work.
That's huge. That's a rock star lender right there. Somebody that's working for you the same hours you're looking at houses on weekends and evenings, guys. That's so important. And you guys have maybe heard about the market. It's hot. It's a very fast market, and you need every advantage you can have to win in some of these situations. And when you're creating certainty for a seller, you'll be surprised how fast that offer moves to the top, because sellers want certainty even in this market. So pre-approval letter, we spend a lot of time on this, you guys, because this is a hugely important part of the process. This is going from yellow light to green light, like I said. Okay, step number 2, we are getting into house shopping. Okay, this is the fun part, right? So you found your lender, now you're finding your real estate agent that you're going to go shopping for houses with. And a huge part of this is narrowing in your criteria and getting yourself access to the MLS. I shouldn't say getting yourself, having your real estate professional give you access to the MLS. Kyle, what the heck is the MLS? Well, the MLS is the multiple listing service that shows every property in all of our market. Back in the day, all the real estate brokerages came together and said, let's make one hub where all the properties are so all the consumers can see everything. That's the MLS. Zillow is not the MLS. Zillow is a lot of times out of date and not up as quickly as the MLS because it pulls from the MLS. So having access to the MLS is going to give you the best information, more detailed than like a Zillow or a realtor.com. And it's going to be faster, and speed matters. And so as far as house shopping goes, the one thing I want you to take away is get yourself a criteria search on the MLS. And how do you do that? You have your awesome realtor that's gonna hook you up with that. So we narrow down this house criteria when we're house shopping. We usually start with a wide net and we find stuff and we kind of whittle it down to really start honing in. And I always like to tell clients at the beginning of this process, you're going to know what house you like the best. you're going to know what the perfect house is for you. But as we work together, we're going to, like for instance, me and my team are going to adopt what's the perfect house for you. And then we can really hunt with a spear on what a perfect fit for you might be. And house shopping, one of the things, we're going to do a lot of showings. We do a lot of weekends, evenings, whenever houses hit. And then a big part that clients can do proactively, if you're just kind of kicking the tires, is do open houses, which are generally on Sundays for you to go view property that way. And so the house shopping is a fun part. This is why people love to kind of be in buy mode, because it's like looking at new stuff and finding what's the right fit for you. Okay, that moves us into step 3, offering. Okay. Now, we talked about this market being hot. This is definitely a different market to navigate when it comes to offers. And there is such a thing that we're seeing called buyer fatigue, which is people are offering and offering and offering, and then they're losing. And I'll say this, you guys, it matters who you're working with when it comes to offering, because there are many, many experienced agents that have contractual tactics we use to help you not just overpay for the house to get it, but do things in the terms to help you get the house at a good price that we negotiate, even in a hot market. So the offering is one of the first, this is when it gets real. Okay. We like the house. It's looking right. What should we do? What are we thinking for submitting an offer? Okay. What should we offer? What do you think? We get that question a lot. Generally speaking, you guys, it's a days on market game, because if this house has been on the market for less than 5 days, just put yourself in the seller's seat. They feel like they got the steering wheel. They have other people showing it. They might have other potential offers. They're in the driver's seat. Now, when we see listings with higher days on market, that's when we can really start to negotiate price, negotiate terms, negotiate for them to pay the closing costs on your behalf. That's generally what's happening in the market, is we're always looking at days on market and what our availability is. And I want to say this, you guys, our market has appreciated in value 4, 5, 6% in different neighborhoods for the last 3 years in a row, which, just to give you perspective, let's call it 4%. On a $200,000 house, that goes from 200,000 to 208,000. Year after that, it's probably getting close to 220,000. So realize, if you offered on that house and you paid 210,000 instead of 200, and you're like, I paid $10,000 over the asking price. In year 2, you're already $10,000 ahead. Okay. And that's a big thing that's tough to think about as a buyer, but the asking price in these hot markets is really the starting point for the right houses. And the biggest thing is, if you see this house as fitting your criteria, fitting your location, and the price range is within striking distance, work with your real estate agent, obviously, on creating the offer that works for you. But I just like to break down some of the barriers of overpaying, because time is on your side. And if you plan to live in this house for more than 3 years, you're not overpaying. Okay. You're going to grow into that price. And so parts of an offer, generally, you guys, real quick, I don't want to overwhelm you, but there are parts of an offer. There's that pre-approval letter that I talked about. There's a purchase agreement, which outlines what you're going to do, what you're offering. And there's generally a couple contingencies. The 2 main contingencies are an inspection contingency and a financing contingency. And as part of the financing contingency, you will have an appraisal aspect of that, which means the bank or the lender wants to ensure that this is a good investment for them to give you money for. So they're going to have an appraisal. And that appraisal is going to do 2 things. They're going to look at value, and they're going to look at the condition of the home. And we have a little part on appraisal, as you can see in the process. So those are the general contingencies. But when we're talking about offers, sometimes it's in a really nice looking house. We've dropped the inspection contingency in order to create a more attractive offer for a seller. And that's something you need to work with your real estate agent on advice on that. But sometimes that inspection contingency is the difference between you getting the house and not. And if you feel that there's the high quality house or it's newer, sometimes it's worth it. But I always like to start with, hey, we like getting an inspection contingency. Yeah, it's something we advise. And so those are some of the different parts of the offer, and we'll walk through some of that in the process here. So step 3, offers. So step 4, boom. All of this stuff before step 4, you guys, can take as short or as long as you want. We have people that come to us and buy the same week that they talk to us. We have people that we've been working with for 4 years. And it's not a pressure thing for us. It's literally, we're just here when you decide to buy. We don't have this thing where it's like, you can only take 90 days, otherwise we're ditching you. It's not the gig. And so all of that time frame before this checkpoint, which is why we have a little flag there, is on your time. But now when we have an accepted offer, it's on the time of the contract, and there's more of a process here now. So checkpoint number 1, as part of an accepted offer, just to get into my lawyer and legal verbiage, a binding contract is made of a piece of an agreement that's signed by all parties plus consideration. Consideration usually is in the form of money, and in this case, it's earnest money. Earnest money, think of it like a deposit that you're going to put with the contract. It's like a rental deposit, if you want to use analogy. This earnest money is always it's going to be the first time you write a check, first time you submit money is right now. And that money goes to a trust account and goes towards your down payment in the end. Okay, so it's always your money. But once you get an accepted contract, it's required. Generally, what we're talking for earnest money is 1% of the price. So if it's a $200,000 house, a general earnest money deposit would be $2,000. And remember, that goes towards your down payment in the end. So it's kind of that's an important part. Now, earnest money, can I lose earnest money? That's a question we get a lot. Our clients rarely, in all of the 700 transactions, I think I've had 1 or 2 people lose earnest money, and it was because they literally voluntarily gave it to the seller. But we have contingencies in place to protect earnest money. And so you really cannot lose it. Getting a little feedback. Somebody's getting feedback. Oh, maybe it's me. Oh, I don't know. Okay, we're all good. So we get our earnest money, we've got our accepted contract. The next step, I always say, hey, we got an accepted contract. We're getting earnest money deposited. So that's a check that you write for that amount. And then you get your inspection scheduled. And generally inspectors are getting booked out. So we want to get on the books with inspectors. And how do you know what inspector to use? Talk to your lender, talk to your real estate agent, talk to your insurance person. These people are amazing at giving you recommendations. And this is the timeline. The timeline for buying a house is generally 45 to 60 days in our market. Sometimes it can be sooner than that. Definitely can be later. When we write that offer, we actually put a closing date in there. But the lenders like us to have about 45 to 60 days because they need to get all of their boxes checked and get the appraisal in. And the appraisers in our area take a little time.
I'm going to chime in there quick.
Yeah, Gabe, do you want to go ahead, man?
We did one in 20 days. Just
all
last
right.
month.
See, Gabe, you're not supposed to tell me things like this because then I start to stretch the closing dates shorter and shorter.
I'll tell you. I'll do it. I got it.
So you heard it here, like there's some flexibility with some of the closing dates. But this is where the timeline begins, you guys. Okay, first checkpoint. The next checkpoint, step 5, inspection. And we call this checkpoint the biggest part of the process. Sometimes people are like, oh, I'm offering on a house, this is real. Really, when you get into the inspection contingency is when it gets real, because this is when you have the property locked up. You have a contract on the property, you're sleeping on it. You're like, okay, is this right? Like, we made a decision. Now nobody can come and get it. And you have time to schedule that inspection and conduct that inspection during usually 10 to 15 days of an inspection period. So you just have to conduct and negotiate any inspection items during that period of time. And that's a contingency on your contract. Now, this also allows us to back out if we see something or feel something off. And so we are able, during this inspection contingency, to back out of the contract, get our earnest money back, and be sitting right where we're at right now. Okay. So that's what I mean by earnest money protected. Inspections generally cost between $350 and $500 from what we're seeing. And that's if you add on things like a radon test or scoping the sewer line. Again, all these prompts will be made by the inspector you might work with. The inspection itself, once you get it scheduled, will take about 2 hours generally. and you're encouraged to be there during that inspection. Nowadays, we have clients 50-50 if they want to be there or they're at work and they just want to get the report at the end. But I always liked when clients come to the inspection and they can kind of get a feel for the house again. They can get a second look. They can be with the inspector, showing all the different components, asking questions. And then after your inspection is complete, you get an inspection report, which I love the reports. I've kept the reports on every property I've ever bought. It's like the owner's manual of your home. And it's not just good in this moment when we're going through the process, it's good every year to revisit for maintenance items and checks and just to-do lists overall. So this is the big moment, this inspection. And this is kind of when you're making one of the bigger decisions to really move forward with this thing. So step 6, as part of this inspection, we have a contingency. And when you have a contingency on a contract, you have to remove the contingency in order to move forward. So step 6 is our inspection contingency removal. And what that means is we can either waive the inspection and say, we're good with the house, we like what we see, or let's say that the furnace wasn't quite working as good as we thought based on the inspection, and there was a broken pane of glass in one of the bedrooms that we didn't see, and the electrical panel had a couple of breakers that were undersized. We can negotiate these items to be fixed by the seller. Generally, we usually talk about safety concerns or major deal breakers. We're not going to create a honey-do list for the seller because they'll tell us to, hey, it's a used house. We're going to move on from your offer. But generally, 2 to 3 items is what I see on some of these inspection contingency removals. And we're usually finding things that we didn't know about the house before we offered on it. A big one that we have seen recently is when the inspector gets in the attic and they check the insulation. And sometimes that insulation has been patted down over the years and there's some heat loss happening, and we might ask them to improve the insulation in the attic. So different things like that, but know that this is the moment when you're actually removing that contingency and kind of moving forward with the process, and there's a negotiation that's a part of it. And let's say you negotiate some things and the seller says no go and you say no go. Remember, your earnest money is protected and you can get that money back if you want to walk away and kind of part ways. No harm done other than the money you spent on the inspection, right? So, okay, moving on. We're making progress here, gang. Step 7, limbo. Okay, this is the point where we find ourselves in between the inspection, which was a big checkpoint, and in between the next big checkpoint, which is the appraisal. But there's some good things to be doing during this limbo phase, which usually lasts about 2 to 3 weeks. So this is where I'm going to kick it over. This is where I'm going to have Brian chime in. And, this is generally where I'm like, hey, go get some quotes on insurance. And I think Brian has some good insight when it comes to getting quotes on your insurance, because there's certain agents that can quote one carrier and there's certain agents that can quote many carriers to get you the best price and coverage. Brian, comments on that?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So there's basically just two types. There's either captive agents or independent agents. Captive agents are agents that just work for one company or represent one company. Independent, like myself, we can represent as many carriers as we'd like. So when Kyle says shop rates, I can plug in information and get quotes back, depending, if it's North Dakota, Minnesota, anywhere from 8 to 12 up to 20, 25 on the personal line side in a matter of minutes. So I can get kind of like an hourglass or a picture glass view of what your situation looks like for that specific property. The nice part about that is it varies from property to property. So one carrier might be really good on this one, but might not be good on this one. So it just depends on what you're looking at. In our market, a 15-minute drive could be South Fargo, it could be Harwood, it could be Horace, it could be a gravel road. So there's a big variety there with what type of premiums you're going to see. When it comes to insurance, so there's a couple things you really want to keep your eyes out for. Obviously, the age of the home can make a difference on your premiums, but the biggest thing is the age of your roof. So if it's an older roof, say 15 years or older, you're not going to be getting any discounts on that roof. If it's a newer roof, your premium's going to be lower. The other thing would be, is there a basement? Is there a sump pump? Did it run when you were there? Did you hear it running? Is that house higher than the neighbor's house, or is it lower? Not that will make your premiums higher, but it's just things to be aware of so that when we're looking at coverage options, that we get it nailed down to what you need for that specific property and not just kind of blanket covered it. Like some companies will do on their quotes. They'll just do a generic quote, but it's not really tailored to that specific property. So the things that I look for: age of roof, the style of home, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how many garages, and dial that in there, and it spits out a quote in a matter of minutes. And I can tell you right then and there, like, hey, if if Gabe's quoting you $100 a month, which is pretty common just for when they're running numbers, preliminary numbers to see what you qualify for, that's kind of a number they use, about $100 a month. I can tell you real quick if that property is going to be above or below. If it's, maybe it comes back 135, I'm like, okay, so if Gabe told you $1,200 a month, you're looking at about $1,215.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're looking at properties, you can kind of get a pretty good idea of what you're going to be spending and what your monthlies are going to come out to be.
Yeah, you guys, and when you're out there getting insurance quotes during this, this protecting this purchase you're making, it's important that you can go and get insurance quotes from agents that lower the coverage to lower the number, right, and win your business. But it's important to have a good price and great coverage for your asset. And so that's where having a person you can trust in this game is so crucial. Brian owns his agency called Insure Logic and has been a really great go-to for us. This is also a time when you can plan for utility changes. Okay, so this is where you're, hey, we're going to be taking ownership of this thing in 2 to 3 weeks. Let's get the utilities kind of set up. What are we going to be looking at? This is where Gabe and his team are getting a lot of their boxes checked, getting final documents ready, making sure everything's prepped for when the appraisal comes back. This is maybe when you get on the moving schedule. I know I've had clients this year that have had movers are booked out, and so this is a good time. No news is good news in this point. Really, it's kind of just waiting for the appraisal. But this is a good time to be active as well. So step 7 is kind of that limbo phase. Appraisal, step 8. This is a big moment. It's finally here. We've been waiting for this. And you guys, I'm just going to tell you 95% of the time, if I'm going to do a stat, and 62% of stats are made up, but I'm just going to go with this. 95% of the time, the appraisals come back great. And the house is good, the value's good. Okay, but they're either all good and we're on to the next phase, or what happens if they're not, Kyle? Okay, then it's a negotiation. Remember, we have a financing contingency on this contract that protects us if anything goes wrong with appraisal. So what happens if it does go wrong? Our contingency kicks in and we either have to renegotiate, which is what happens most of the time, or technically we can back out and get our earnest money back at this point. Most of the time people don't want to, but we have that power as buyers. So always have that protection. So what does a negotiation look like? If the value is lower than what we accepted, we're generally asking them to lower the purchase price. And they might not jump on board with that, but there might be some compromise in there. Or Gabe and I have one right now, Gabe and I in Austin, where there's a couple of repairs that the appraisal has called out that they want to see done on the house before they can give the okay on the appraisal. And so that's our negotiation. We're talking with the seller about getting some items done so we get all thumbs up on the appraisal. And again, I want to stress it, earnest money is protected. That $2,000 you put down is completely protected. So you guys, there's a very high likelihood that when you get to this step 8, that you get an email from a guy like Gabe and he says, guys, we got the appraisal. It's in, we're good. It's at value, no repairs. Let's move on towards closing. So let's stay in that optimistic mindset, right? But just know if there is ever any hiccups, that's why you have your team there. That's when having an awesome realtor and a Rockstar lender and an awesome realtor really come into play when you're going through some of these parts of the transaction. Okay, step number 9. clear to close from the bank. Okay, Gabe, can you give us a quick little insight? Like after you get the appraisal, you're just getting you're getting your file all set and you're finally going to say the magic words to us, which is like the loan's approved, we're ready to close.
The three magic words everybody wants to hear: clear to close. Yes, after we get appraisal in, we submit for final approval from our underwriting department. And it could be that we have all of the income and asset verifying documents already in, or underwriting may request something as silly as a letter of explanation for a deposit you had 5 years ago on your bank that you didn't even know about. So they can make some pretty picky requests, but that's something that both me and our processing team help translate underwriting into English. So we submit for that final approval. Most of the time we get that final approval right after the appraisal is in, and then we clear you to close on the home. After that happens, that's when we work with the title company and the seller's title company to balance all the numbers and make sure all the numbers are finalized so that you can know exactly to the dollar what you'll bring to closing. Now, I send an estimate out on every home anyways. Most of the time, my estimates are about $100 to $150 higher for the amount due at closing than what the final numbers end up being. That's just to give a little extra padding so that we can give you good news at the end rather than have something happen and give you bad news at the end. So once all those final numbers are done, we let you know exactly what you got to bring to closing, exactly how much you got to bring to closing. You're cleared to close, and typically we'll call you to make sure you're feeling all right for closing, first of all, because a lot of people get that feeling in their stomach that they're making this huge purchase, right? And so I call you to make sure you're doing okay and we're on the home stretch, and then we go over that final numbers email, and then people are good to go from there.
Yeah, and I just got okay, so we got a little quick question here. Sean, this popped up. Is this process the same for new builds? And Gabe, thanks for giving us the kind of the quick background on kind of clear to close numbers. Sean, to answer your question just kind of live like this, the new build process is eerily similar to this whole thing, except for there's some design meetings up front with new builds. You know, you have to kind of work with the builder in order to kind of get everything ready. And then the timeline for new builds right now is closer to six months. That's going to be a longer term. But when it comes to financing, all of it's very, very similar. Inspection, there is a difference there. Generally, we don't see people doing inspections on new construction because the city inspects it, the builder does their final checks, and there's a 1 to 2 year warranty on your new construction. So we advise a lot of people to have an inspection on month 10 or 11 of their warranty, and then give that to the builder and have all those items fixed. So generally, there's not an inspection contingency. The other thing that I'll note on that, Sean, which is a really good question, your earnest money is not protected rarely protected, almost always not protected. In some cases it is if you're holding a lot or something like that. But on a new construction, if they've moved forward on building you a home and taking that risk, your earnest money is gone. And it's generally, I've seen as little as $2,500 to get a new build going, usually around $5,000, and as much as 5 to 10% sometimes with larger homes. So just know that when you get a builder hired and they're going to move forward on digging ground and putting in concrete and all that jazz, you're committed, and you're not going to get that earnest money back if you were to back out for any reason, which rarely happens. But there's some differences. But then it still gets appraised, and then we still kind of go through that process. So good question. Okay, back into it, gang. Step 10 is final walkthrough. This is checkpoint number 4. I always say you kind of have to buy a house 4 times. You offer, you inspect it, you get an appraisal, and you get a final walkthrough. This is the last time we see the house before we own it. Okay, so we want to make sure it's all looking good and feeling good. Generally on an existing home, we're doing a final walkthrough and we're checking to make sure they have all their stuff out. I can't tell you how many times they've left us a like an old cavity back TV that weighs 800 pounds and said, "Hey, we left you a closing gift in the living room." It's like, we don't want your TV, you know? And so sometimes that's what we're doing, but we're making sure all the dishwasher works, the toilets are flushing, the heat works, the air conditioning, and just making sure it's kind of how we want it before we sign the dotted line. If there's anything wrong with the house, understand we can work with the seller to get things corrected. And that's something that does happen. You know, there's little things, like I just had one where the seller left a bunch of garbage on the driveway, and we were just like, we're going to be moving in and this thing is clogging up. We need you to get that out of there. And we were able to get that taken care of. And if we can't get it taken care of before closing, we generally don't hold up closing, just to kind of shoot you guys straight. We'll make an agreement for it to be completed, and just know, like, a lot of times us as a brokerage back that up to make sure our clients are taken care of. But generally, you know, these are little things that we can make sure they get navigated, and we can still close on the house so you can continue with your plans. And of course, final walkthrough, this is where you get that sold sign picture to make a memory. You gotta document the good things in life. And so that's a big piece of it too. You get a smile and maybe a kiss on the cheek. You know, those are always my favorite picks. So, okay. Step 10, final walkthrough. Quick note on a new construction, final walkthrough is even more important. This is where usually they do a big type of orientation to your house as a builder, and they give you all of the different components of your house, all of the warranties, how to maintain a house. So with a new build, there's definitely a little more. It usually takes closer to an hour, and then they give you a lot more information on how the house works. So that's kind of a difference there. Step 11 is closing. Okay, this is where you're going to go to the title company or wherever the closing office is. It's only going to take you 15 to 20 minutes. Some people think like, oh, we got to go close for an hour. It's just signing a lot of documents, verifying numbers you've already seen, and then bringing your money for closing. Whatever Gabe's told you, there's what's needed for closing. We call that the cost to close. There's a number, and you have to bring that in via cashier's check or a wire from your bank. And then you've submitted the money, you sign the documents, and you get the keys on your house. So that's the super exciting part. And that's when you actually own it. You know, some people are always, they ask me, you know, after closing day, like, can we move in? And it's like, yeah, after that moment, when you sign and get the keys, the house is yours to do whatever you want with. And so you can schedule movers that afternoon. And, you know, we like to have closings in the morning so people can kind of use the rest of the day. So that is our finish line. Here is the summary page of everything we talked about. And I like this page because if you want to take a picture, this is a good time to do it. So you can kind of like review and be like, oh, what was step 6 again? And what did he say in step 10? You know, this is kind of all the details we went over. So you can kind of see that. I'll give it a little time. If people are snapping any pics. And again, we have this recorded, but, and then I'm going to move on here. Okay, and this is again the process. If you, in case you wanted to just take a quick snapshot of this as just a refresher. I know after presentations I retain like 10% of it, and I got to review. But this is kind of our roadmap that we found really helpful for people. And questions in Austin's beautiful picture and fake abs. Any other questions you guys have? I really wanted to. We've got a little time here. We did good. We've got 11 minutes. Anything pop up? Anybody have anything running through their head that they want to navigate or ask questions about? We have a smaller crew that's in it, live attendance, and just note, you guys, you'll see the people on my team here, which are Josh. Josh, there you are. Josh is our marketing guy. Jory is kind of all things operations. Austin is our agent on our team. Chad is an agent that's in the area here. Any one of us can also answer questions at any time, you guys. This is something we're navigating constantly. And so whoever invited you is a great resource for asking questions. But some final thoughts on this, gang, to leave you. This process is all about who, not how. It's going to be the easier process, or the better people that you've put in on your team is the easier this process gets. And so don't ask yourself how you buy a home, ask yourself who we need to get to help us buy this home. And that's a huge part of it. And hopefully you heard that theme through the presentation. Generally speaking, there's 4 checkpoints: offer, inspection, appraisal, walkthrough. And you guys, the big thing that I've been navigating conversationally with a lot of people in our area is, man, I don't know about buying in this market. I think I'm going to wait till things cool down. I think interest rates are high right now, and I don't feel certain it's a good time to buy. And what I need to tell you is the people that I see studying this industry, and especially the people locally that I lean on as mentors for studying our market in Fargo-Moorhead, we think this is the beginning of a new normal, and this is going to last for the next 3 to 5 years. And there's going to be some really great opportunity. I want to tell you one story of 2 different people. In 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty. And I had certain clients that completely backed away from the home buying process in 2020, said, we're going to wait till some stuff calms down. Totally understandable, by the way. But then there was also clients that bought homes in 2020. And we're sitting here in 2022, and I'm giving them new evaluations on their home values. And this is an example of one client that bought in 2020 at 207, and I gave them a home evaluation this year, and their house is worth 250, which is a 21% increase in their price. And they've got, what is that now? $43,000 in equity built because they made a decision to follow through with their home building plans. This isn't a hard sell, you guys. This is just reality of this is going to continue to be a normal for us. There's not going to be this big dip in Fargo's market. It's a very boring trend line in Fargo. It's not like Phoenix and Minneapolis that goes like this. So for people that are jumping in and following their plans, they're usually seeing fruit the next year and the year after that. And to this couple's merit, $43,000 in their pocket, and their debt went down and their appreciation went up, and it's a great investment. Whereas the other people are throwing money away at rent, which I'm just not about, So that's just a really, this is coming from me and a team of people that are nodding their heads that study this market all the time, and we're in it every day. And so this is straight from the horse's mouth on what we're seeing.
There was a question from Sean, I believe, on closing costs, Kyle.
Good.
Can I chime in on that?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Gabe.
So Sean, to answer your question with a little bit of detail, closing costs will vary by home. They will vary by what the property taxes are, what the insurance comes in at, and just what the market is at the time that you buy. Typically what we see is closing costs between 2.5 and 3% of the purchase price. So homes with higher property taxes especially might be even like 3.1 or 3.2% of the purchase price. But typically between 2.5 and 3% of the purchase price is what you can kind of expect. And those closing costs, they include the lender fees, the appraisal fee, title fees, government fees, and those prepaid taxes and insurance that you fund into an escrow account. I can get into more detail at another time if you want to have a one-on-one, or if anybody wants to. But those are the kind of general fees they include, and they're right around between 2.5 to 3% of that purchase price.
Yeah, great thing to touch on. And here's what I'll say from the realtor perspective. When I started my career, we were constantly asking sellers to pay closing costs. And if we see a house sit on the market for 2-3 weeks, we're usually reducing price and asking for the seller to pay closing costs. And that looks like asking the seller to pay that 2%, 3% of closing costs. And that's something that comes out. They take care of that at closing. So know that still exists. We've had a couple clients recently that got some closing costs paid. So it's not off the table, but something to talk to your real estate and strategize with your real estate professional on. So I'm all about next steps, you guys. The next step after, if you're curious about this process and you're getting your head around it, is not to wear the whole burden of this thing. It's to set up a one-on-one home criteria consultation and get yourself access to MLS. Even if you're not buying for a long time, we really urge people to get access to the MLS because you get a feel for the market. You get a feel for what houses are hitting, what houses are selling, what you're drawn to, what you're not drawn to. This is such a good exercise for you to get kind of your nose in the game of what's out there. And so that's just something that your real estate professional can give you access to and get you set up with what we call a drip campaign on the MLS. And so next steps, you guys, if you're curious or somebody here invited you, we would love to do that meeting. Our calendars are open and we have fun with that meeting. Josh was going to put my link tree in the chat if you want to reach out to me directly. That's my scheduling tied to my calendar, and you can schedule time with me to do a call or an in-person. You can definitely schedule a meeting with the person that invited you to this call. We encourage that. That's awesome that they provided this as a resource, and we love having you. And we're all about making a game plan. It's all strategy. It's also next steps. It's getting access to the MLS. It's talking to a person like Gabe to see what pre-approval looks like. Which, Gabe, when you get pre-approved, how long do they usually last? You know, how long can you kind of keep the pre-approval?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, the first pre-approval will last 120 days. And that's mainly because credit expires after 120 days. So really all we have to do is refresh credit after that time and make sure you didn't like quit your job or something like that.
Yeah.
That's obvious to make sure, but typically about 120 days.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you guys. And so getting pre-approved 120 days from now is, you know, this fall. And, you know, and so if you're kicking this around and you want to see if you would, what you get pre-approved for and stuff, for you to get pre-approved is very easy if nothing changes, like Gabe said. And so we're all about making a game plan and taking some of those initial homework steps off your plate, like MLS access, pre-approval, and then it's just finding the right place. So many times what happens with this is if the right place hits, you're in a position to move and make your next step. And that's all we want to put people in a position to do. So with that said, you guys, the last ask I have is follow me on social media. I love putting things out about real estate in the market, and I'm always doing funny stuff or informational stuff or, you know, tagging different people doing fun stuff in the community. So definitely check me out on social media. I'd love to connect with you that way. And the final piece that I like to put out there is, again, we love to invest, and we actually have a community called Passive Income University that is full of like-minded people that are investing in real estate and other assets to create passive income. And this is something we really geek out about. And so I'd be remiss not to mention it. And we love talking with people about that. That's Passive Income University. If you want to explore it or schedule a strategy call to tell us your vision, that's at p25kg.com. And then we love to connect with you that way if your head's kind of going towards the investment side of real estate. So you guys, lots of information. I think there's my link tree in the chat if you want to schedule some time. Really appreciate you being here. And we're 2 minutes before 7:30. Look at, did good on timing, got some questions answered. And guys, we hope this isn't the last we see you, because this is what we really enjoy to do. And anything we can do to add value is where we want to be. So that's that. Thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed your DoorDash, and hope to talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.